Alright, Just TV fans, this is it for my Transformers week. This is what I'm talking about with the Transformers bonus disc. We're going to take a look at some of these and, well, let's go. Let me start my yapping.
Autobots, transform and roll!
We had no idea that we were creating a phenomenon that would be around this long. In the early 80s in Japan, there were several companies that made transforming type products. Some were vehicles to humanoids, some were vehicles to vehicles, and various things like that.
Transformers had been introduced in the United States under the name Diacron, and a total failure.
And they were a lot of sort of dissimilar products, one-of-a-kind, sort of disconnected products.
The announcer just stood behind a table that had the products on it that had been created by the Japanese, and just said, this is a robot, and it can turn into this, and this, and they didn't create any good versus evil or anything like that. He just showed what could be done.
But it wasn't until really Hasbro found out about this kind of toy phenomenon in Japan and thought that there was a really great idea in there if we could just wrap a story around it and bring personality to these great toys at the time.
Once they got here, they had no fantasy, no character names, no good versus evil, no home planet, any of that. So what the executives and advertising team did here was create that story.
The Transformers, more than meets the eye. Autobots wave their hammers and destroy the evil.
We literally left the first meeting with a box of some samples with a long list of the products that was going to be the line, and there were cars, and there were airplanes.
And we started talking about the line. At the end of our trip from Rhode Island to New York City, we knew what we wanted to do. And we all were in agreement about that because kids like cars. Kids like cars. Okay, the cars will be the good guys. Planes, they're not too sure about planes. How many plane trips do little kids take, especially in those days, right? Okay, they're not too sure about good. Those will be the bad guys. Guns are not good. That'll be the head bad guy.
The storyline really does need to make it really clear who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And because they were changing so rapidly, and they each had two modes, and it became visually distinct to be able to set them aside as Decepticons fly, Autobots are on the ground. And that was how we thought the kid could really keep track of who was who.
And so that was really how we divided up the line, and then we knew where we were going with it, and there was a question of naming it and focusing it.
Mostly what we were doing was, creating the color language for the teams. Also, faces needed to look different on some of the products for the U.S. than they did for Japan. So primarily those were the kinds of changes to bring them in line with the storyline that we had created.
My son Jay Bacall was the one who named it the Transformers, and we really liked that a lot. And then the group at the agency also came up with Decepticons for the bad guys and Autobots for the good guys. When we presented the Transformers name, the marketing people at Hasbro liked it a lot. They thought that was really terrific and unique. But Stephen Hassenfeld was concerned about it. And what he was concerned about it is that kids might think, and their parents might think, that it was a toy that had to be plugged into the wall. And we said, no. Really, it's going to be what we tell them it is. It's going to be something that is able to change from one shape, transform from one shape to another shape. So in a sense that was what it would be, and that's what the Transformers word would mean.
At that time, we worked with our comic book partner to create the story and the characters.
I was an editor at this comic book company. Jim Shooter, my boss, editor-in-chief, had developed a treatment that got approved by Hasbro. Civil war rages on the planet Cybertron. Destruction is catastrophic and widespread, and yet no life is lost. None, at least in the sense that we know life. For the inhabitants of Cybertron are all machines. Anyway, and this 8-page treatment is the basis of everything that became the Transformers from then on. But he wanted further development on the characters, their names, their profiles. There was probably about 24 characters that were in the initial toy line that Hasbro wanted developed. I took these. I think I was given the actual toys, the actual Japanese imports at the time, and knew what they did and knew who were the bad guy Decepticons, who were the good guy Autobots. And I would just play word games in my head, do word associations. You know, if somebody turns into a particular kind of creature or vehicle, what words are connected to those objects or those animals that I can use? This is like the Dead Sea Scrolls here. This is a sheet of paper I used to carry around with me all the time, jotting names down. And probably there's 300 names on this one sheet of paper, many of which became Transformers. These are the actual profiles that I hand wrote back in the 80s that turned into the character profiles that went on the packaging that were used in the comics, et cetera, et cetera. And this one I'm holding up right here, this is Megatron. I have Decepticon Gun, codename Megatron, function Decepticon Leader, and then profile. Love, compassion, mercy are words that have no meaning for Megatron. He has risen to the leadership of the Decepticons by a combination of brute strength, military cunning, ruthlessness, and terror. I would submit these to Hasbro. They would look at them. We went back and forth on a couple things. Had to come up with a couple different names here and there, but that's how it worked.
And then we came up with the idea that because it's from one shape to another shape, that we needed a driving line that would capture that. We came up with a line more than meets
All right,
the eye.
guys, that's
It's a robot.
that's about it.
But
That's probably
it's
all.
really a car.
Let me
You
know
think it's
what y'all
a
think,
robot?
and
It's really a
see you
plane
guys later.
or a weapon. Or
I'm gonna do one more video, and
dinosaur
that's
that
it.
turns into a robot.
See y'all later.
Once they really